We all think we know how to study. You read something, you review it, and, well, once you can remember it, you just move on. But what if that whole approach, the one most of us have used our entire lives, is just fundamentally wrong? Today, we're going to dive into some science that completely flips our understanding of learning right on its head. So let me just ask you straight up. Are you studying the wrong way? I mean, think about the last time you really had to learn something important. Did you whip out the flashcards, reread your notes over and over? Yeah, most of us do. But it turns out the absolute best method is one that, well, it feels a little weird, a little less intuitive, but man, is it way more powerful. This quote right here really gets to the core of the problem. It's this common sense idea that once you get a flashcard right, boom, you've learned it. So you put it in the done pile to focus on the harder ones. It feels efficient, right? It feels productive. But is it actually doing anything for your long-term memory? Okay, let's get into the good stuff. To really figure this out, some researchers designed this brilliant experiment to put that learn it and drop it strategy on trial against a few other methods. And this is where it gets really interesting. So the setup itself was pretty simple. They got a bunch of college students and gave them 40 Swahili vocabulary words to learn, like mashua means boat. But the real genius here wasn't in what they were learning, but in how they were split up into different groups to learn it. So they were divided into 4 groups. Group 1, they were the hardcore ones. They kept studying and testing all 40 words no matter what. Then you had Group 2. Once they got a word right, they stopped studying it, but they kept getting tested on it. Group 3 did the exact opposite. They kept studying the word, but it was dropped from any future tests. And finally, Group 4 did what most of us do. Get a word right once, and it's gone. No more studying, no more testing.
So with these 4 totally different strategies, which group do you think learned the fastest? Well, the answer from the initial learning part was maybe not what you'd think.
And this is fascinating. On the surface, the strategy didn't seem to matter at all. The learning curves, the charts that track how fast they mastered the words, they were nearly identical for all 4 groups. Everybody seemed to cross the finish line at about the same time. And this part is key. The students themselves didn't feel any difference. When they were asked to predict how many words they'd remember in a week, pretty much everyone guessed around 50%. It really seemed like all roads were leading to the same place. But boy, were they wrong. But the researchers knew the real test was yet to come. They brought all the students back a week later for a surprise final exam. This was all about long-term retention. This was the moment of truth. Would everybody remember about half the words, just like they thought they would, or was one of these learning strategies about to blow the others out of the water? The results weren't just a little different, they were absolutely shocking. The 2 groups that stopped getting tested on words they already knew, they only remembered about 35%. But the groups that kept testing themselves, they recalled a massive 80% of the words. I mean, let's just stare at that comparison for a second. Dropping a word from your tests after you get it right once leads to 35% recall, but just continuing to test yourself on it, even if you stop studying it, leads to 80%. The only big difference was the simple act of testing. To put a number on it, just repeatedly testing yourself led to a more than 150% improvement in long-term memory. That isn't a small edge. That's a whole different universe of learning, and it's unlocked by one tiny change in your strategy. The researchers' conclusion was just crystal clear. Going back and studying words you already know, it did absolutely nothing for remembering them a week later. But more testing on those same words, that had a huge positive effect. The act of pulling the information from your brain is what actually locks it in. Okay, so this is an incredible finding. I mean, it's a real game changer. But what does it actually mean for us, in the real world? How can we take this science and use it to change our own study habits for the better? So, the scientific term for this amazing technique is retrieval practice. It's not about passively rereading or just recognizing information. It's all about actively pulling it out of your own head. Think of it like this. Every time you do that, you're strengthening the neural pathway to that memory, making it way easier to find the next time you need it. So here it is, the big takeaway. We have to fundamentally change how we think about testing. A test isn't just a tool to measure what you know. The test itself is one of the most powerful learning tools you have. It's not an evaluation. It's a workout for your brain. So, how do you actually put this into practice? Well, here are a few super simple ways. When you're using flashcards, don't just toss one out of the deck because you got it right once. Keep it in the mix. After you read a chapter in a book, close it and try to explain the key points out loud, just for memory. And most importantly, take practice tests, not just to see what your grade might be, but because the act of taking that test is literally making you smarter. And that really leaves us with a final massive question to think about. The science is clear. Actively retrieving information is like a superhighway to long-term learning. So why are so many of us still stuck on the slow, scenic route of just rereading things? It's probably time to rethink not just our own study habits, but maybe how we approach learning altogether.